Thank you, Charles. So to summarise a couple of the themes from the previous presentations, on the one hand, at the macroeconomic level, we've got a whole raft of economic indicators that are suggesting that things are getting much better, big improvements in GDP and big improvements in economic growth. However, at the same time, and to sort of summarise a couple of comments, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and there is a disconnect between that economic growth and actually it feeding through into the consumer. So at YouGov, we decided to give ourselves an exercise. And this exercise was to use all of the data that we could find, all of the data on our panel, all of the data that we've been collecting via our brand tracking tools, all the data from our opogram, where we're just getting people telling us their likes and their dislikes. And you'll see a sort of a whole raft of stuff in this booklet here, to actually profile these people, to actually say, what do the people who are getting richer look like? And what do the people who are getting poorer look like? And to try to find out as much information as possible. And to give you an idea of just the scale of the information that we have available, we have up to 160,000 data points for each of our panelists. So 420,000 panelists in the UK, 150,000 or so are active and continuously doing a lot of surveys. So we can get from this to a data set. So for this particular exercise, we took one measure in our economic confidence tracking, which was the household financial position. And we looked at all the households that are getting richer and all the households that are getting poorer. And then for each of the people who had been answering these questions, we looked at up to 160,000 data points to actually profile them. So we're taking the data points from our TV consumption work, we're taking the data points from everything that we've got. And so just to give you an idea of just the scale of that, looking at an average of around 5,000 data points for 20,000 panelists gives us 100 million in a data set. And we somehow have to make sense of that 100 million data points. So to do that, on the following slides, you'll actually see something called Z-scores. And without getting too technical, a large Z-score basically means that we've got a lot of confidence in there being difference between two data sets and that there's a big difference between them. Okay? So just starting with one of the measures that is in our household and our economic confidence. Here, we're looking at households and we're asking people, do they expect to be getting better off over the next 12 months, or do they be expecting to get worse off? Which is actually the sort of red line, and the green line is actually the change over the last month. And just looking at the last quarter of last year, essentially, if you look down the bottom, I've broken the index down. So we've actually looked at the absolute percentage and the number of people who are saying that they're expecting things to get worse, no change, and better. And out of there, you'll just see the concentration of actually how few households are reporting that things are getting better. So only 8% across the last quarter of last year, which equates roughly to about 5.1 million people in those households. Vast majority of people are not feeling any effects from the upturn, so 60%, 7% are saying no change. And 25%, actually a lot more people are saying that every month the household financial situation is getting worse. It's getting worse because things like wages aren't keeping up with inflation. It's getting worse because of cuts to benefits and austerity. But then we're also asking people about their expectations. So people are seeing that the economy is improving, and there you'll actually see that there's much bigger polarization. So if you concentrate on that middle number, the no change, 43%, that's actually gone down a lot, and people have actually moved into the better or into the worse. And so we're seeing much more of a disparity in terms of people's expectations for next year. So what we've decided to do is profile all of the people in that worst bucket, so the 39%, and all the people in the better bucket, and see statistically what are the differences between them. What do these people look like? So the first and really sort of startling thing that came out of this is that the benefits are being felt disproportionately in households that are based in London and the South East. So effectively what this means here if you look at the blue chart, is that London and the South East is much more under-indexing on the expect worse. So if you're living in a household in London or the South East, statistically it's much less likely that you'll be saying that you're going to be getting worse off over the next 12 months. And equally, it's much more likely that you'll be expecting to get better off. And just to give you an idea of the sort of sense of this, it's not that obviously every household in London or the South East is expecting to be better off, but just there's a much higher chance. So effectively, it's approximately 1 in 5 households in London are expecting to get better off, but you'd only really expect it to be about 1 in 8 who would be saying that if it was at the national average. So this recovery is being concentrated geographically in more likely in one area of the country. And then looking at all the sort of profile data points that we have for these people, we have 1,100 data points here. So to give you an idea of scale, if you imagine this slide, and then you imagine 110 more slides underneath it, with these scores getting lower and lower and lower and lower, you have 1,100 points on the, and obviously you can't get it into a PowerPoint presentation, right? So you'd have 1,100 of these, and we're just showing you the top 10. So you don't really have to understand kind of what Z scores are, you just have to understand that this is the top 1% of factors that stick out statistically. And you can read through them sort of quicker than I can go through them, but it's people who are expecting to be worse off are older, they left school early, they're more likely to be retired. Interestingly, statistically, much more likely to have voted Labour in 2010. And this sort of gets to YouGov's methodology and the sort of things we can do. We actually ask people straight after the election where they voted, and so we know where people voted. And you'll see that they're public sector employees. They tend to read the Sun, the Star, the Mirror, and they more often than not divorced. Now, not all of these things are true for everybody in that sample, but these are the things that are more likely to be true. And then we looked across all these 1,100 things, so imagine again a whole sort of lot of slides, and these are the top differentiating people of the things that people are expecting to be better off over the next 12 months. So they're younger, they're on social media, you can see that they didn't vote, or they voted the Conservative Party, and we don't know which way around cause and effect is here, by the way. We don't know, okay, that whether that you were poor or you vote, or that Conservatives have done a very good job of rewarding all the people who voted Conservative. And again, you can see that it's almost a sort of mirror of the previous ones. So then sort of drilling beyond the PDL stuff, what we call the PDL stuff. Here, we have 70,000 sets of data. Now, these sets of data aren't survey-based. It isn't us actually going out and saying to people, which of the following 10 things do you do, or which of the following 20 things. This is actually people typing in and telling us the things they like doing, or the things they don't like doing. And for each of these data sets, there are actually hundreds of variables, hundreds of different things that people could have typed in. So again, these are just the very sort of top ones off a selection of data sets. And you can see that the people who are expecting to be richer, well, they're having a good time. They're going out, right? Pubs, bars, clubs, theme parks. They're sleeping. And sleeping, I'm actually just going to put out there as something just for you all to remember, because it seems a bit odd, but when I get to a later slide, it might make a bit of sense. The people who are expecting worse, and again, this is just stuff they've typed in, looking after their pets, gardening, DIY, they're having to stay in, they haven't got any money. And again, cause and effect, I don't know, it's because, but you'll see that it's interesting in terms of the profile and what they look like. And then here on the left, you have all the sort of people that people are saying that they like, right, if they expect to be getting richer, and all the people they say that they like if they're expecting to be getting poorer. And on the left-hand side, with public figures, you'll see a whole bunch of conservative grandees, basically, except for, well, maybe Karen Brady is, but or business people or kind of established people, and also Nick Clegg. And on the public figures worse, a lot of Labour, and actually people like Dennis Skinner, it also goes to the age factor, right? I mean, you mentioned Dennis Skinner or John Smith or Tony Benn. It's a particular sort of type of person from the Labour Party. Columnists, again, a sort of a big spread there. You've got Kevin Maguire, Fiona Phillips, sort of Mirror columnists, and then on the left you've got the sort of a lot of the Telegraph, or and Fraser Nelson, of course, from the Spectator. So again, you're seeing this, and this again, just to reiterate, isn't from surveys, and it's us summarising and finding interesting patterns in 70,000 different sets of data to show you it. I've also put comedians in there, and I didn't actually quite know what that meant, but I thought I'd put it in there just to show you the difference. And we have all sorts of other things in there about whether people believe in angels and all sorts of things. Personality traits, and this is where I said remember sleep. So you'll see the descriptions. This is what people are actually saying about themselves who think they're going to get richer. And clever, analytical, a leader, confident, and lazy in there, which maybe explains why sleep was one of their pastimes. And then descriptions for worse are compassionate, depressed, big-hearted, considerate, good listener. And here you see a very sort of different kind of type of person. And again, cause and effect, I'm not sure which way around. I don't know if it's because you're depressed and you're compassionate that you're not earning any money and you're expecting not to earn any money, or that you're depressed and compassionate. Yeah, so. And then what was really interesting is this is, again, just off what people are telling us. So institutions trust better. And here, statistically, you'll see the scores for Bank of England, United Nations. But when we looked at worse, there was nothing other than the NHS. And the NHS is scoring very low statistically. So there wasn't any pattern in what people were saying they trust. So here you can see that actually people who are expecting to be getting better off actually trust the establishment, and people expecting to be worse off really don't trust the establishment, and the only thing they do trust is maybe the establishment is NHS. And then equally, when you flip it around and we're looking at people typing in what they don't trust, there's nothing statistically for households who think they're going to be better off, and then quite a lot of institutions that people don't trust that they're expecting to be worse off. TV programs we looked at, so 2,500 TV programs. So here you have to imagine that this slide, which I've broken in the middle, actually stretches for 2,500 data points from left to right. And again, I'm just showing you the extremities. And here we just compared the two groups against each other, so everything is inverted. So if you look at the bottom, people who are expecting to be better off are most likely to be watching Family Guy, Have I Met Your Mother, American Dad, New Girl, so imports from the US, it fits with the younger demographic, Big Bang Theory, for example. People who are expecting to be worse off, if you start on the sort of far right, you see the regional aspect of it. You've got regional news and weather, you've got ITV, and then you've got Emmerdale, you've got Coronation Street. So again, you start understanding how these households are very different. We also, taking all the information we have from Brand Index, we were able to connect this into what was happening. And you can see here that the households are expecting to be better. People from those households, where do they shop? What are they customers of? So again, 850 brands. So you can imagine lots of slides going down, 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 down. These are the top scores. You'll see here, it's about people who commute, right? There's a lot of train companies on the better ones. It's about convenience. So it's people like Pret, it's people like Starbucks, it's food on the go, and it certainly isn't about the sort of the cheaper brands or the ones offering the best value. You look on the right, and it's the inverse of that. So you've actually got Brewers Fayre, which is I think their motto is something like tasty food at tasty prices. You've got Iceland, you've got Lynx, you've got a whole different type of brand list. And interestingly, if you look at the technology brands, on the better you've got Apple, and on the worse you've got Virgin Mobile and Nokia. And again, cause and effect could be one way round or the other, but you can see sort of the patterns in there. And then equally, we looked at impression. So this is brands that people have a positive impression of. So they don't need to be customers for this slide. And I think here is interesting of what brands are in both and what brands are actually in different. So if I look at on this one, where people are customers, for example, you have on the left-hand side you have Domino's Pizza, second from bottom. So people who are richer or expect to be richer tend to be customers of Domino Pizza, and also they have a good impression of it. So that not only are they customers, but they have a good impression. Whereas if we go and look on the worst side, you'll see that Bang & Olufsen aren't there, that people who are expecting to be worse off aren't customers of Bang & Olufsen. However, they have a good impression of Bang & Olufsen, so you can interpret that in a number of different ways. I mean, maybe it's an aspirational brand. And equally, there'll be brands that are in here, for example, Sanex, McLean's, Imperial Leather, that people have a good impression of if they expect things to be worse. And these are brands that are about sort of essentials and not brands like the ones on the left, which are sort of Spotify, Love Film and iTunes, which are about offering you something else. And finally, something else that we've done, and another sort of data set, is we actually have a whole section of our panel that's now volunteered to let us track their internet searches. So we can actually try and validate some of this information from what people are actually typing in. And here, again, sort of long lists, but I've just taken the top sort of findings. And on the green on the left are essentially things that people have been typing in who are going to get richer, but haven't been typing in if they're getting worse. And then on the right, you'll see the things that people are typing in if they're getting worse, that they haven't been to get richer. So the time we were doing it, lots of people were typing in the same type of things like YouTube and Amazon, but what really stuck out there are things like national lottery. So if you're in a household that's getting poorer, you're typing in national lottery. On the left, not typing in national lottery, but you are typing in right move. So the people expecting to get richer are either thinking of moving house, or they're sort of doing a bit of house porn and they're looking at what all the prices are on all the other houses. And the people who are getting poorer are more likely to be typing in the likes of national lottery. And you can see the brands there again, which reinforces some of the things that we've been saying. Just to summarise, the difference between these two sets, if you were going to paint a pen portrait, if you're going to actually say what is the profile, what is the difference, it is that the households that are better tend to be more in London and the South East. They're trusting the establishment, they're employed in senior positions. The ones that are getting worse tend to be more regional, they tend to be anti-establishment. The people there are on benefits, or they're retired, or they're low-income jobs. People who are getting better tend to be politically conservative or centrist, the ones worse politically left. And you can read through, and I really think that summarises it, it's probably sort of Family Guy and Big Bang Theory, these sort of Coronation Street and Emmerdale. And you sort of might say, well, does any of this matter? And I think it does, because when we sort of the first slide that I put up, when we looked at the numbers of people, remember that the better is far outnumbered by the worse. So there was a lot more people expecting to get worse off than better off. So that matters from an economics point of view, because if you're concentrating the money in the better, then you're not actually going to stimulate as much demand as maybe you need to. And as Peter has alluded to, it also very much matters from the political point of view, because if there are so many more people in this worst bucket than the better bucket, then that will just have political ramifications. But also here it points to some social differences as well, and it points to who is benefiting and who isn't benefiting from the upturn.